My name's Jeff Laughlin, and I'm here today to talk to you about side mount diving. Myself and Jill Heinrich decided to make a movie on training and actually show some different ideas and some different equipment styles for side mount diving. So today what I'd like to talk to you about is side mount diving. What is it? Also, where did it originate from? Where did it come from? We're also going to get into some overhead side mount diving, which would be cave and of course the wrecks and things of that nature. Then we're going to get into technical side mount diving, because you're seeing the last couple of years a lot of people are actually going out and doing side mount in the oceans instead of just in the overhead environments. We'll also get into recreational side mount diving and see why there's a big trend of people going into the recreational world in shallow water with the two bottles or the side mount diving gear configuration. And then we're going to get into specific gear and some details. So we'll go over some different manufacturers' products that they have out there in side mount, go over some different rigging techniques for recreational side mount, also some rigging techniques for cave side mount, and then lastly we'll get into some technical rigging with deco bottles and stage bottles and things of that nature. As we progress on, we'll go into the actual swimming pool and show you how to do a lot of these skills that you'll be able to do when you're taking a class with your instructor. And then we'll progress into our open water world and get into possibly some caves and some wrecks. So if it sounds like fun, it sure does for me. So let's go ahead and get started. What is side mount diving? Well, it's basically exactly what it says. It's tanks on your side. So we're going to mount a cylinder on your left side and a cylinder on your right side versus possibly one cylinder on your back or two cylinders on your back. What are the advantages of that? Well, let's look at it as safety. For one thing, if you look at your cylinder right here, I can see my valves, I can see all of my hose connections. Every leak point that I have on that life support system is in my view. Also on the right side, identical, every possible leak is also in my view at any time. Now if I'm a diver with a single tank or double tanks on my back, I can't see my hoses, I can't see any leak points. So for safety, absolutely we have a safer system when we're diving side mount. You know, when we're diving a side mount system, we have two completely separate life support systems. So as we're diving underwater, if we do have a problem with one of the life support systems, we can actually jump to the other life support system and make a safe ascent to the surface. So that's another huge safety consideration that we have. When you start diving in the confined water in your class and also in the ocean, you're going to find out that your trim, which is your attitude the diver is in the water, is going to be better in the side mount gear configuration. And the reason being is because the cylinders are at your side, not on your back, and we can adjust the trim by moving the cylinders point forward or back. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later when we get into the gear configuration and gear rigging of how we adjust your trim by moving the tanks forward or back on your body. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where did it originate from. You know, in my research, the side mount actually came from the cave environment, and I was looking pretty much around the world, and I found that in Europe in the early days, back in the 50s of my research, showed that people were diving side mount in the caves. Why? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, because the side mount gear configuration allows you to be really streamlined and keep all of your equipment inside your center axis of your body so you can go into smaller openings. Another reason is the availability of doubles. You could take the single tanks and you could put them on ropes and you could lower them down or you could walk them down to the cave. So the early pioneers in the cave diving world were diving this side mount gear configuration for that exploration. Then of course it was brought over to the United States, and in the US also the early pioneers were diving in the side mount gear configuration so they could do some exploration and also get some ease of getting into and out of some of these different types of caves that we have. Now, in the United States, the cave organizations, several of them decided that side mount, because of the gear configuration being able to carry one tank at a time in the water, being able to suit up with your tanks in the water. Also because of the safety aspects of being able to see your hoses and gauges as we established earlier, some of the training agencies decided that why not start your cave training in the beginning right from cavern in Sidemount. So some of the agencies are allowing instructors to start off in cavern through their basic cave, through their cave classes in the Sidemount gear configuration. Now with that, now we're seeing a lot more people that are taking up diving, especially I'm seeing a lot more people with smaller statute or possibly people that had some conditions with their back, wearing double tanks on their back. They're starting to get more into some of the cave diving. We're seeing more and more people diving Sidemount in those caves for those reasons. Now, in addition to that, because now that we're allowing Sidemount in caves from the beginning of cavern, we're looking at, all right, what are we going to do for those people that want to go further? Because typically in the caves, the Sidemount gear configuration, when you think about it, was to get into smaller area. But now with the Sidemount going mainstream cave, you have people that want to go extended range cave, or they want to go further into the cave. So we had to come up with a way to adapt those stage cylinders or those deco cylinders onto a Sidemount system so people could penetrate further into the cave. So keep that thought, because later on today, when we get into the gear rigging, we're going to show you one idea, possibly two ideas of how you can carry those tanks if you're into doing some of that exploration cave diving. So we've established that Sidemount started in the cave world. So probably in my world about 5 or 6 years ago, what I've seen is that a lot of the cave divers started going out in the ocean. When we started going out in the ocean, we're saying, you know, Sidemount works great in a cave. Why wouldn't it work on the ocean? Let's think about that for a minute. If I'm diving out in the ocean and I want to carry 2 tanks, why not carry them on my side instead of my back? Why? I can see all my hoses again. The safety reasons, just like we had in the cave courses, we now have in the ocean. How about the availability of tanks? You know, when you're traveling abroad, a lot of times it's difficult to go and find back-mounted doubles, or you have to travel with your isolator valves, or you have to travel with your back plates and wings. Well, with the Sidemount system, you basically can go to any of your dive operators and just say, hey, I want a couple tanks, and with your proper training, you take those tanks and you go and you plan your dive and dive your plan. So it's opened up a lot of different dive sites, a lot of different technical diving that we have with Sidemount that might not have been as easy to dive before when we were just using with back-mounted doubles. Let's talk about why technical open water Sidemount and why we're seeing worldwide people wanting to get into Sidemount gear to go technical diving. Well, as I said, one is ease of cylinder use. Anywhere you go in the world, you can grab single cylinders. You want to plan a dive with 4 or 5 tanks, you grab 4 or 5 tanks. Proper training, you put them on. Another one, as we already said before, is the safety. How about the ease of carrying your tanks to the water? Instead of carrying doubles on your back, you can carry one at a time. And I can tell you now, boats love Sidemount divers because they don't have those doubles laying on the deck where they're moving around, scratching the gel coat up, so they can put them in the tank racks. So it's absolutely a benefit for everybody. And of course, the oceans like Sidemount divers too, because as you're going to find out in this class and when you start your own class, is the fact that you can get the diver's trim a lot easier with Sidemount, so we're not hurting the corals, we're not hurting anything on the bottom as we're swimming along the reefs and enjoying the ocean's wonders as we go. So that's technical Sidemount diving, but one of the things that I love, and I'm sure a lot of you do too, and that is wrecks. You know, I'm a cave diver, but I'm also a wreck diver, and let me tell you, by diving Sidemount in the wrecks, it allows me to access parts of some of these beautiful shipwrecks I've never been able to access before. Because now I can go down on these wrecks and I can find an opening. I can take my deco bottles and stage bottles and rig them on the outside of the wreck, just as your instructor is going to show you, and then I can penetrate the wreck either with 1 tank or 2 tanks in a no mount gear configuration, which we'll show you today in the pool, or if possible, I can go through the wreck with both tanks on the side. That will enable me to get into places in the wreck that I've never been able to get before. So that as I exit the wreck, I can come back out where I dropped those bottles and tied them off and pick those bottles back up and continue my dive. A lot of you will have a lot more fun now in your wreck diving, being that with proper training, you can access parts of those wrecks that you've never been able to access before and get some better penetration dives throughout those vessels. Okay, let me just tell you what a side mount rig is. This is basically a side mount system, and you notice I have some clips here, some D-rings, and these D-rings are for me to utilize when I'm using deco bottles or some stage bottles. Now on the bottom here I have a straight D-ring all the way down on the harness. This D-ring is used for my bungee cord. So on a side mount system we have a bungee that's attached to the back of the wing, and we bring the bungee over to the front. And as we start our dive, we actually take this bungee and wrap it around our tank valve. And what it's going to do, it's going to pull the cylinder close to your body. So as you're diving, that cylinder is going to get closer in. Now, depending if you're cave diving or wreck penetration or open water diving, you can get different size bungees. If you're out in the ocean, you might not want that bungee tight that's actually forcing that tank on your side because you're not doing any type of penetration. So you can have a little bit of a looser tank on that side. We also have the same exact bungee on this side for the left tank, and again is attaching from the rear. Now we have the conventional inflator, just like you've learned on any regular BC. We have the auto inflation, the oil inflation, and then you can do a straight dump off the top. Okay, in addition, on the front of this particular wing, we see that we have two inflator hoses. You have a left and you have a right. Basically, this is because it's a dual bladder inflator. So for the technical divers, where you need that dual bladder for redundancy, with the side mount systems we now have that dual bladder incorporated. Also, we have the dump valves on the inside of the left and the inside of the right. Because you have two different bladders inside, you need to be able to dump both of the gas in both bladders. We have a conventional buckle with a waistband strap, and on that we have a crotch strap that comes between our legs and hooks onto this waist buckle right here. The reason we do that, it keeps the back of the wing from floating upward, because that crotch strap coming down, hooking onto the waist strap, keeps it nice and snug to our body as we're diving. Now, in addition to that, we have a D-ring on this crotch strap. And what D-ring is utilized for is if you're a diving propulsion vehicle or a scooterer. If you're a scooterer, you're going to utilize this D-ring in the front to actually hook your scooter to pull you through the water. Now, if you're not scootering, as you notice, what I've done is basically I fold it inside so the scooter ring isn't on the outside of the harness. Now, on the back of the harness, we have some rails. These rails are located on the bottom of the harness here, and we're going to call these handles. When we're diving in the pool or diving in the ocean, this is where we clip the bottom of the tanks to on these handles. The handles on the back have some other grommet holes. You basically can take a screwdriver, pull this out, and move the handle. Why would you need to move the handle? Well, because everybody has different lengths of arms. So when your instructor, and you're taking your class with your instructor, you want to be able to reach behind you and grab these handles comfortably to hook up your side mount tanks so you can move the handles as you need. We also have D-rings in the middle of the harness, and these D-rings are utilized to click accessories to, such as if you have spools that you're doing any wreck diving or any type of a cave diving with, or any primary reels that you might utilize, you can hook onto that center D-ring that's in the middle of the two rails. This is the adjustment strap on the crotch strap, so if you need to adjust it tighter or you need to let it out, this would be the adjustment for the crotch strap. This particular piece of equipment also has several D-rings. These D-rings can be utilized for accessory equipment such as a alternate air source system, argon bottle, or in this particular case, a light. What I'm going to do in this model is I have a canister light. What I will do is I'll take the canister light itself and put the battery pack on the harness. Like so. There are some other places on this system you can wear your light canister. One of the ways could be on your belt strap. So as your waistband strap's coming around, you could wear your canister on your waistband strap, or you might even drop it lower instead of having on the back of this side. You can actually move the canister and rotate it and wear the canister just on one side, upside down, in that fashion. And another way that you can take a canister light is basically you can butt mount the light, so you can come all the way down the bottom to your rails, and you can clip some double end bolt snaps and have it all the way down at the bottom and have it butt mounted on top of your handles. I want to give you some ideas of some adjusting straps. First off, you have your chest strap that goes across this chest here with a quick disconnect, and it's very important that you have this because we have on and connected, because with your side mount cylinders it has a tendency of pulling off to the side of the harness. Also on your D-rings, it's a good idea that your instructor is going to show you and fit these for you, that you can be able to grab, you would be able to grab your D-rings with your thumbs. This is a nice proper location of those D-rings. And you have the, certain harnesses have adjustable straps on the shoulders. With your instructor, you want to make sure they adjust this properly, because fit is everything in side mount diving and comfort. So your instructor can fit these harnesses really nice and tight to you so you have a more enjoyable dive as you're diving. One of the other features that I'd like to show you on the front of this harness is I've added a D-ring on my right hip here. So those of you who are doing some technical diving and maybe you're just going to grab one type of a light deco bottle, you can see you can add a D-ring to your waist strap here, hook it up here, and wear it conventionally just like you would a very conventional deco or stage bottle. And another item that's on the back of this harness is, you notice this manufacturer basically has a couple cut throughs onto the harness. The cut throughs are designed that you can take your basic cam bands, string your cam bands through, and now you have a single tank wing where you can wear a single cylinder in the middle of your back just like you would on your regular conventional recreational BC. What we have here is we have a smaller side mount system, which is a Hollis SMS 50. This particular side mount system has approximately about 25 pounds of lift, and it was designed for recreational divers in particular, and of course for some cave divers in Mexico where you're mainly diving with aluminum cylinders. Just like the conventional side mount system, we have two handles in the back, and these are just round, and they have the adjusting points as we saw earlier on the other side mount system, where you can adjust them for the length of your arms. We also have a couple D-rings on the bottom, here and here, that's located so you can butt mount your canister lights on these. On the side, we have the hip rings on both of the sides, so you can actually take your tanks and move them from your back rail to your side D-ring, which your instructor will show you when you're taking a class. We've added in this particular one a weight pouch, so they have a weight pouch that's up on the shoulder that would help you to add some weight into the harness. We rotate this side mount system over, we see your conventional straps just like we have on a regular system over the left shoulder and over the right shoulder, and this particular one is padded. It still has the crotch strap that's coming up, and of course your waistband strap to attach it to your body. Now in this particular one, they've taken the inflator mechanism and they've run the inflator mechanism from the inside of the left of the wing up to the top, and we are holding the inflator by a bungee at the top. And so you have your auto and oil inflator right here on the left chest area. On the inside of this particular product, there's some weight pouches, so you have some added weights you can put on the right side, and you've got some added weight in this pouch that you could put on the left side of the harness. Now with side mount, there is a couple things that you have to watch. And as technical divers or cave divers or recreational divers, all of you know that you have to watch your gas supply. So with side mount, we have two pressure gauges, and you're going to have, depending on your gear configuration, you'll have your pressure gauges up like this, which is an upward gauge. Or you might have your gauges tucked against your chest with some bungee, or possibly you could have them tucked down along the cylinders. Whatever you prefer, that's fine, because the beauty of side mount diving is I'm going to just show you one way to rig, but then you can make it all personalized. So as you start your diving career, you might change this and change that just like you did with your technical kit or you did with your recreational kit to make it fit you. But you have to monitor those two gauges. So when you have a single tank, you have one gauge, or you have back mounted doubles, you still have one gauge. So the other thing we have to worry about is those gauges. What I recommend is that you transfer one tank to the other about every 500 psi. More on that when we get in the swimming pool, and also when you take your class from your instructor, he'll elaborate a little bit more, and they might change that 500 psi to 200, 300, whatever that you desire in your class. Now, also a beauty about side mount is getting into the water. You know, with the side mount gear configuration, I can jump in off a vessel with a giant stride, just like a recreational diver or technical diver. I can also use a drop line, which is what I prefer, and we just take a 3/8 or a 1/4 inch or whatever line you have handy. I put a 2-pound weight on the end of that, and then I tie little nooses or little knots inside the cord. What I then do is when I get on the vessel, I tie my drop line on the port or starboard side, basically lower it in the water, take my tanks, and I can clip them on the line and lower them into the water. Now I can jump in the water if I want without any cylinders, swim over on the surface, put on my first tank, which would be the left, use that tank to go down the drop line, put on my right tank, and off I go and enjoy the beautiful underwater world. When I'm done, I come back to my drop line, I take the right tank, clip it off on the line, go closer up to the surface, then I can take my left tank, clip it on the line, get back on the vessel with absolutely no tanks. Now, another way that you can get in with side mount, of course, is just like a back mounted diver. You can take your 2 cylinders and you can have them on your harness, and you can walk right in the water. Now remember, when you have the 2 cylinders on your harness, they're down under your arms, so your center of gravity is lower, unlike if you've got them on your back, where you, of course, you're going to have the weight bending you over at the top, where when you have them below your arms, you're going to have a more stable platform. Or if you're doing a beach entry, like I've done in Eilat, you can basically take the tanks, hold them in your hands. If you got a nice calm day, walk right into the water. You get in past the surf zone, you can go clip, clip, and off you go and enjoy your dive. So you've got a lot of versatility with the side mount gear configuration that we didn't really have before with the back mount. We still have all the entries and exits that we could do with back mount, but we have all those different advantages that we can by clipping those tanks on and off for a side mount. Let's think about a diver's trim. You know, with a recreational diver, you have that single tank on the back, and a lot of times the highest point, if you're swimming anywhere, is going to be that tank valve. Well, with the side mount divers, we have those tank valves underneath your armpits. So as we're swimming through the water, we have a lot better trim. And of course, because we have that better trim, we're not having a feet down situation where we're hurting any of our fan corals or elkhorn corals or any type of the bottom as you're swimming on these reefs. Also, with the recreational diving, we have one big advantage, and that is if you use the side mount system for recreational and then you think, well, you know, this is kind of cool, but I want to go look at some of those deep wrecks, or I want to penetrate that wreck, or, you know, I might want to go look at some caves. Well, now, depending on the manufacturer's side mount system that you buy, certain manufacturers have a system that you can use in the recreational world and then take that same system and use in the technical world. So it will limit the times that you have to purchase the equipment, as long as when you shop in the beginning, you shop wise and buy that system that can go ahead and go through multi-facets of diving. So one thing we haven't discussed right now, which is I think very important in side mount diving, and that is the cylinder size. You know, with side mount, we can take any cylinders of any size anywhere in the world and we can dive them because we're clipping them on our harness. So what I personally like is I like smaller cylinders for recreational diving, such as aluminum 40s, or I like low pressure 50s. And the reason I like them is because the diameter is small, so they fit very nicely under your arms, and you can just walk around, you can swim around in the water, you don't even know you have anything on. From there, we can progress up with a little bit more gas to your conventional aluminum 80s, which works fine. And then for the technical and cave divers, you can jump up and put the steel tanks. So again, with the beauty of side mount systems and the harnesses, we can dive any tanks at any time, anywhere. And I hope everybody out there who is watching this video tries diving some aluminum 40s, because when you dive a couple of aluminum 40s and you have that freedom of movement like nothing's on, you're going to love it just as I do. Now that we've talked about cylinder size, let's talk about weighting. Because around the world, people are diving in different type of exposure protection. We have dry suits, we have just bathing suits, we have 5 mil, 3 mil suits. So because of that, you're going to have different weight considerations in the side mount diving. So certain manufacturers will make a side mount harness that you can unstring the harness on the shoulders here and here, and you can actually put some block weights to offset your buoyancy. So you can wear a weight belt and you can offset that with some actual weights on your harness itself. We've got some long tails here of some of the webbing. We don't really want to cut those off. I know you look at them, you think, well, I need to cut those off, they're too long. What these are there for is they're intentionally left, so you can basically take these and you can unstring them by just taking this through here, through there, back through here, undoing it this direction. And now we could take a weight and we can sling a thread, a weight through the harness, come back through, and as you can see, by continuing to thread the weight through, you can add weights to the top of the BCs. You can put the weights here on the top of their D-rings, or some people actually take the D-ring themselves and put the D-ring in the middle of the weight. Some other people, what they like to do is they like to take another cam band and they put an additional cam band on a cylinder. So we have one cam band on the bottom of the cylinder, and they add another cam band with a lead weight on it, and then of course your safety clip at the top. So that's another place that you can add weights in addition to your weight belt by adding them, putting them on the cam band. So with side mount, whatever way you prefer, you can put all the weight on your weight belt, you can take the weight on your weight belt, you can move some to your harness, and you can move some to your tanks. Again, the beauty of the side mount, you're able to achieve whatever buoyancy needs you need to by distributing the weight throughout your whole diving system. When you buy your side mount system, one of the ways that you can attach your cylinders to your harness is by using stainless steel bolt snaps, some nylon string, a cam band with stainless steel buckles, and a stainless steel weight keeper. So when you're completely assembled it, it would look like this. Then also, we need to use a choker for the top of the tank, and again with approximately 18 inches of cord and a stainless steel bolt snap, and this would be the choker for the top of the tank. So to assemble them, you can take your nylon cord in approximately 18 inches, tie a half knot in the end of your nylon cord, and then simply take your stainless steel snap, feed the nylon cord through, and now you have a choker, which we'll show you later goes on the top of your tank. You can assemble the second one in the same fashion, and now you would take your cam strap, move your weight slide up, just slide the exact same size piece of nylon cord through, and pull your strap back. And then you have your cam strap for the bottom of your tank. So I like the cylinders to point towards the diver, and in this particular right cylinder, the valve handle will be down away from the diver. The air is going to the diver. I will then take the cam strap, and when I take the cam strap, I always want the knot to be on the top. So when I place the cam strap over the top of the cylinder, I'll place it down and run it down to a good starting point, which I like to start about 6 inches from the bottom of the cylinder, and close your band. Now, also when you close your band, I would like to start with the bolt snap and the knot in a line with the opposite end of your knob on the right tank. So you come down on the opposite end of the knob, and that's where your knot's going to be. Now it is important that we put the knot on the top. The reason being is when you attach this clip to your handrail, the torque or the pressure is going to be placed on the strap itself by pulling upward and not on the knot. If you were to inadvertently put the knot down, you could pull the knot through the cam strap. So now that we have the cam band on the bottom of the tank, we need the safety bolt snap on the top. So we basically take our bolt snap over the top of the handle, and it just affixes onto the tank as such. So now when I would put my regulators on, I would rotate the tank around. Again, the right side, the knob is down. this bolt snap would clip onto the top of the harness, and then the bottom bolt snap would clip on to the handle. So now that we have the right tank assembled, we're going to go ahead and assemble the left tank. Again, remember we want the airflow going into the diver, so the diver is between the two cylinders. With the cam band on the left cylinder, we also want the knot on the top. So we rotate the cam band down to approximately 6 inches from the tank. We close the cam band. We take our safety bolt snap, place our safety snap over the top of the cylinder. So now, if I am the diver between the two cylinders, I have my two safety bolt snaps that I can hook to the harness, and I also have my bottom bolt snaps that would hook to the handles of the rear of the side mount system. Now, in this particular situation, I have a right valve and I have a left valve. So you notice both valves are down with the airflow in. If you are traveling abroad, anywhere that you're going, you're most likely going to get just standard tanks that have right valves. So remember, we want the air to come towards you in the middle as the diver, so the air is coming towards you. So your right valve is going to be down, but now your left valve knob is going to be in towards you. So there is a difference. Remember, your left valve knob is going to be in towards you and your right valve is out. You're going to put on your cam bands the same way. Just rotate your cam bands down, line them up about 6 inches from the bottom. We'll adjust those more into class, and then take your safety bolt snap and put it on. And again, the difference is now these are going to hook to the top of the harness, the bottom of the harness, one valve knob down, one valve knob inward. Okay, what happens now, this is just particularly my way of rigging that I like, but there's a lot of other ways that you can rig. Once you take your side mount class, your instructor is going to teach you different ways that they like to rig those systems. So don't be set on this being the only way, because there are many ways to rig your cylinders. So now that we've got our cylinders rigged, let's go ahead and take our regulators and rig the regulators. Now, I like to start with my right side, and on our right side what we have is we've got a 7-foot hose. Now, you don't have to have the 7-foot hose. You can use a 36-inch hose, a 5-foot hose, or whatever your instructor is enabling you to do in the class. But I'm going to go ahead and rig this for technical side mount, and so I'm going to use a 7-foot low-pressure hose that's attached to my second stage. Now, also what I've added on this particular second stage is I've got a swivel. You don't have to use the swivels. It's personal preference, up to you and your instructor. I personally like to use the swivels, and I've added a bolt snap onto that swivel, which I utilize to clip off. So I've got basically a swivel that's attached to the second stage, and I personally like the swivel because it allows me to have a nice angle, and it keeps fatigue off of the jaw when it's in my mouth. With these swivels, you want to make sure that you do have the attachment points to the regulators, and you want to check to make sure they're tight so you don't have anything getting loose where you would loosen up an O-ring. And you want to make sure that you follow all manufacturer specifications if they happen to have any kind of torquing involved, as they do on this swivel. You want to make sure it's torqued. Besides these swivels here that do a 360 rotation, there are some people that have a fixed 90-degree swivel. So again, up to your instructor, or when you're going to your dive store and purchasing this, you will decide on your own if you'd like to do the omni swivel, no swivel, or of course the 90-degree angle swivel. That's totally up to you. So now let's go ahead and rig our cylinders up with the regulators. The first thing that we need to do is we need to take some hose retainer straps and put them on the cylinders themselves. This is basically just some rubber tubing that a manufacturer is selling. You can make your own, and it's just going to go over the scuba cylinders. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and place 2 of these over the cylinders. And the reason we're utilizing these is because in this particular system we're using a 7-foot hose. So we want to route the hose inside these retaining straps so that way it's nice and streamlined as we're diving. All right, so we have the two rubber bands on the tank, and you can buy some of these commercially from different manufacturers, these nice bands for holding the long hoses or retaining your hose. Now, next thing I like to talk about is a regulator. Now, there's a lot of different kind of regulators out there today on the market, So depending on what type of regulator you have, your instructor is going to help you assemble and help you do your hose routing. This particular regulator has a swivel turret. So with the swivel turret, what I personally like to do is put the swivel inside close to my body versus having the swivel on the outside, which would have the hoses that could get caught on some outcroppings. So I like to have it on the inside. If you happen to have a regulator that has a fixed turret, again, your instructor is going to help you do that proper hose routing. So this is a DIN regulator. You might have a yoke regulator also, and you would attach them in the same fashion. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the right tank regulator. And if you notice, I'm attaching it with the pressure gauge upward fashion. And this is a 6-inch pressure gauge hose with a brass pressure gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and pressurize that hose now. And once I get it pressurized, you can see it stays nice and upright, so I'll be able to read that hose in the water. On the left side, depending on your regulator, as same with the right, you're going to have different routing of the hoses. In this particular regulator, because it is a swivel, I'm going to go ahead and mount it on the tank in the exact same fashion as the right regulator with the swivel turret in towards me. Now with the right one, I also have, in this particular gear configuration, a 15-inch low-pressure hose. And the reason this 15-inch low-pressure hose is located at this fashion is because this tank is going to be on my left side, and it's going to hook into the left inflator mechanism so that the inflator mechanism will always be in the center of my chest. So if I'm diving a dual inflation system, I'll have both inflators in the center of the chest. If I have a dry suit on, I'm going to have the dry suit inflator mechanism coming from the opposite side, and typically my dry suit possibly could be in the center of the chest, so I have both of my buoyancy control devices right center chest. So on the left side, we have this 36-inch low-pressure hose that hooks onto the second stage. It also, in this particular one, has the swivel, and I've got a necklace that's made. So when I place the necklace over my head, and then you notice it fits nice and comfortably right around my neck, and my inflator hose would hook up into the center of the chest. Now on the right side, basically all I've got to do now is take my right regulator, and it's going to wrap. I have both of my breathing devices, right regulator out, left regulator in. Also what you'll see in the pool is when we're using our left regulator in, we take our bolt snap of the right and hook it off on the harness so it won't get entangled when we're not using it. So now that we have the regulators attached to the tanks, the harness attached to the buoyancy control device, this is what you're going to look like as a side mount diver. So if you notice on my right side, the way that I have these pressure gauges rigged is I've got the pressure gauges were in the up position, so I can look down on my right gauge, see my gas. I can look down the left gauge and see my gas. As far as for the regulators, I've got the right hose on top, so I can breathe off the right. If I need to deploy the right, which we'll do in the pool today, I can basically unwrap it around like this and hand it to my dive partner, and he can pull the slack out, and we can go ahead and make our ascent. Wrapping it back around my neck like so, and it hangs. So picture myself in the water in a horizontal position. So as I'm diving in the water, you can see both of my breathing devices, second stages, are right around the neck, which is very easy to get to. So if I wanted to do a regulator switch around every 500 psi, I take the right regulator and I basically clip it off to the harness, and of course I have my left one into the mouth. I always recommend having the breathing device in your mouth before you go to the clip. Once I was completed my left, I can go to my right, which we'll practice in the pool, unclip, and back to my right. Center of the chest is my inflator mechanism, so I can have my inflation here. And as you'll learn from your instructor, you can dump from this direction, but also if you put your hand in the left rear, you can use your rear dump, which you'll practice with your instructor when you're in the pool. Now, in addition, with my regulator set like this, if I wanted to, I could take some bungee cords and bungee the pressure gauges to the harness. Again, that's personal preference, up to your instructor and yourself when you're diving. Also, some people take the pressure gauges and run them down the tanks. Personal preference for you. In the class, you'll also do some drills, like for example, valve shutdowns, or you'll be turning off a tank. Fairly simple with these regulators because unlike your back mount where you have to reach behind you, in this gear configuration, you can just reach over here, grab your knob, turn it on and turn it off. And on your left side, you can just reach in, grab your knob, turn it off and turn it on. So it makes valve shutdown drills very simple if you had a problem and you need to shut one of these down. Now I'm going to rotate and show you how they hook onto the back of the harness. And if you notice on the back, I've got my scuba cylinders and they're hooked onto these rails as we talked about earlier. So all I have to do is put my hand in and I can undo it off the harness or I can put it back in the harness. One important safety consideration with side mount diving, especially when you're diving off a vessel, shores, and you're doing some walk in the waters, is the safety clip we talked about earlier. So we want to make sure that we always take our safety clip and clip it to the harness. So that way we've got the tank attached to the harness and we're not holding the tank to the harness with just the bungee cord. So it's very important that we always use the bolt snaps, so when we're walking or carrying the equipment around, it's being supported by the harness. So typically when I put on the side mount system, I put on the side mount system as so with the safety clips holding the tanks on top of the cylinders. Once I get in the water, then I can bring the tanks closer in my body with the bungee cords. Now with the right valve, all I have to do is take my thumb, reach down and grab the bungee cord, and I can wrap it around the tank knob, and that's going to pull it in close to my body. However, with the left valve, the knob is inward. So with the knob inward, I need to take my bungee cord, extend my arm straight out, wrap it around the knob, take my other hand, put it inside the bolt snap, then come on the inside and clip it off. So now I have both tanks closer to my body as I'm diving. When I get done, get out of the water, I just reverse. I would simply come in and grab the bolt snap, pull it clear, switch the hands, pull it clear of the tank, and then I typically clip it off the top. When I come to the left side, all I have to do is rotate it off of the knob. One of the ways to rig a deco bottle or a stage bottle for side mount, again, there's several ways to do this. I'd like to share with you today one way. This is an aluminum 40 cylinder, and what we have to start off with is a C-clamp. You can buy these C-clamps at a lot of the hardware stores, or you can buy them through your local dive store. And basically on the C-clamp it has a cover. This is a nice nylon cover that's manufactured for this. What also works quite well is just some tubing. So you can buy some clear tubing, and that's just to feed the C-clamp through the tubing, which will look like such, so that way you can avoid any kind of snag points on your wetsuit or your dry suit as you're holding these stage bottles behind you. So we've already got the nylon cover on this C-clamp, so what we're going to basically do is take it and rotate it down on the cylinder. Now, the way I like to start on the deco rigging is I like to go down about 1/3 of the tank's distance. So you can just basically break the tank up into thirds, and then I would start down about 1/3. The next thing you'll need to do is take a bolt snap and you'll have some bungee cord. You can buy these bungee cord at a local hardware store, or you can go to your local dive store, and they actually sell now side mount rigging kits. And this particular one is part of a side mount rigging kit. And it's just basically a half knot on a piece of bungee cord. What we're going to do here is we're going to take the knot and feed it up on the top of the clamps as such. So that way when it attaches, again, we're using the strap to take the force and not the knot. If we put it in reverse, like this, and we attached it, the knot could come undone and pull through. So that's why we want to make sure we put the knot at the top on the band. So now typically what we like to do in one way in the side mount is I like the valves on a downward motion. So if the valve is, the knob of the valve is down, I would rotate my bolt snap about an inch on the inside of the opposite of the knob as such. Now I'd take the screwdriver and tighten the C-clamp down on top of the bungee cord. Now once we have the clamp tight, the knot is going to hold it from pulling through, and we now have the bottom of the tank attached. Now this bolt snap will go on the back of your handle of your side mount system along with the back of your main cylinders. So you clip this right into the same handle on top of your main cylinders. The next thing we need to do is we need to put the strap for the neck part, or the necklace part. Basically what we have here is another piece of bungee cord, and we just basically have looped it in and tied a knot in it. So it's another piece of bungee looped in with a knot. Again, you can buy that at a local store, go to your dive shop and buy a rigging kit. Also, we have two stainless steel quick links. Now the beauty of the stainless steel quick links is the first quick link is utilized to attach the harness to the tank, and the second quick link is utilized to attach a bolt snap on your regulator second stage that would hold onto this stainless steel D-ring. So to make this go around the knob, I basically take the bungee cord, rotate it back into the first quick length, and now you have a hole, and you can basically take that, wrap it around your knob over your cylinder, and now you've attached the quick bolt snap with the bungee to your tank valve. And again, the second quick link would be for your regulator hose routing to hook into. So now we have one bolt snap which would come underneath your arm and attach to one of your D-rings of your harness, and the rear bolt snap would attach to your handle. Now when you're taking the class with your instructor, they can change the distance of the clamp on the tank. For example, if we take this clamp and move it to the rear of the tank, what that will do, we'll take this tank and move it more forward. So the tank would be more forward, easier for you to access underneath your elbows. However, all the way forward where this clamp is now, when this attaches to your handle, this tank is going to be far back on your mains, out of your elbows, so you have more freedom of movement. Again, this is something in a class you will be adjusting with that cylinder on how it fits for your body. So once we've got our cylinder rigged, this is an aluminum 40, but the same rigging system would be used for any of the cylinders you'd like to use. So for example, aluminum 80s, 12-liter tanks, you can use this same rigging system for those. Now to rig the regulator on the cylinder, the first thing I like to use is to put on is a hose retaining system. So this is basically a commercially made piece of elastic which I can slide over the tank which will allow me to have the hose retained in the cylinder, next to the cylinder. And that's a nice 4-inch one. You can also buy a smaller one and just use some regular tubing similar to that on the regular mains for your side mount system and just make it smaller. Okay, once we have the hose retaining straps in place, now we need to get a regulator. Now, depending on your manufacturer's regulator, get with your instructor, your dive store, you're going to have different routing depending on your makeup of your first stage. But basically when you do a side mount rigging kit or deco bottle kit, you need a first stage of a regulator. I also use a 6-inch pressure gauge, hose, a pressure gauge, and then I use a 40-inch low pressure hose. The reason we use 40 inches is because remember your deco bottles are going to be behind you on top of your mains, and they're not going to be in your front where you would conventionally have them chest mounted with doubles. So we need the longer hose to reach back from around your neck to come forward. Again, in this particular system, I've added a swivel. If you do use swivels, make sure that they are tight. Make sure you follow all your manufacturer's torque specifications. This is a 360 swivel. You might also have a manufacturer that gives you a 90-degree swivel, or you might not use a swivel at all. That's up to you and your instructor when you're putting your equipment together. I have a bolt snap on the hose, and this bolt snap, when it's attached and rigged, will attach to the quick link that we referred to earlier in the makeup. A lot of people ask, why are you using a bolt snap to a quick link? Well, remember, these bottles are going to be behind you, so if you didn't bolt snap the second stage, it is possible that the regulator could fall out of the retaining and you could be dragging your hose because it's not in your vision as you're diving. So that's one of the reasons why we attach the bolt snap to the swivel. So once this is done, next thing I will do is I'm going to go ahead and take the cylinder up and I'm going to attach the first stage to the valve, and then I can attach the bolt snap to the quick link, and now I can stuff the hose inside of the bungee retainers or the hose commercially bought retainers. Okay, so now I've got the hose inside the hose retainers. I've got the tank regulator hooked to the valve, and then I have a pressure gauge down. Now, depending on your instructor and how you would like to dive, some people prefer to leave the pressure gauges down on the tank so when they reach behind them, they can reach behind them and rotate the gauge and look at their gas. Some other people like to basically take the pressure gauge and tie it to the regulator. And in this fashion, when it's tied, you can pull it in front of you and read the gauges. There's a lot of different ways to tie these regulator pressure gauges to the tank. You can use some nylon string, or in this case, I'm just basically going to use a quick tie. So now what I have is I have the regulator attached, and this is rigged. So if I was going to put this on my harness, this part would be hooking onto the top of the handle, and then the other bungee on the top would basically come underneath my arms and attach up to the harness. So it would be looking like this when it's attached behind me. When I needed to deploy it, as we'll see earlier, I can reach back with my hand. Because it's bungeed, I can pull it forward. I can look at my gas, match my gas, look at the gauge, turn it on, reach over, undo the quick bolt snap, pull the hose clear, wrap it around my neck, and then let it go back behind me and continue the dive.